tend to buy cars that are in the last few years of their production cycle and not willing to be the first one to adopt to new products, for cars at least. 4 years ago, I bought a 2020 Toyota Tundra SR5, put a rear locker in it, 37s on it, lots of Overland mod. Then due to personal health reasons, I had to trade my Tundra in for a Tacoma. Now my vision for this Tacoma is to build it in a very subtle way, so it stay as close to stock as possible, but with minor improvements to better suit my needs. I want to use this video as an opportunity to archive my journey with this Tacoma so far, also showcasing the off-road capability of it in its current state, comparing it against a brand new Land Cruiser 250 series and a FJ Cruiser Trail Edition. They're all in stock configuration, so they're very similar and comparable in terms of off-road capabilities. I wanted to find out whether the longer wheelbase Tacoma can hang with the shorter wheelbase big boys in the stock configuration. Okay, let's start with the modification of the Tacoma. I want to go over my wheels tire setup, suspension, skid plates, sliders, front rack for lights, and my lighting setup. Oh, and of course I want to show you guys how I undercoated my Tacoma. Because being a Toyota Tacoma, I want it to stay rust-free as possible. I'm also going to explain my thought process leading up to the decision of which parts to use, pros and cons from my personal experience with each part I put on my Tacoma. First, let's talk about the most important mod for a truck, wheels and tires. I firmly believe that a good set of tires is critical for a vehicle's performance, whether it's on or off the pavement. I had very good experience with multiple sets of BFG KO2 tires in the past 8 years of off-roading on several of my vehicles. So naturally, I have to wait for the new KO3 to come out for the size that I wanted. I wanted 265/70 R17 tire size because it's one up in size over stock 265/70 R16, and I don't want to lose a lot of drivability on road. I think this size gives me a good balance between on and off road. Before I dive deep into the KO3 experiences of mine, I want to give a shout out to this great tire shop near me. They're United Tires, located in Downingtown, PA. I'm putting the information of the tire shop in the description below. If you're in the area and looking for tires, please check them out. The owner's name is Greg, and he gave me a really great deal on the set of KO3 tires. I believe currently they also have the KO3 tires in 285/70 R17, so if you're just in the market, please hit them up. The technician and staff members there seems all to be car people, and they really pay attention to details during the entire installation process. So far, I've put around 2,000 to 3,000 miles on these tires. One trip to the beach and one off-road trip to my local off-road park at Rausch Creek. I'm averaging around 22 miles per gallon calculated on highway, which is around 2 mpgs lower than when the truck is on stock size tires. The noise level of the KO3 tires feels lower than the KO2, probably due to the tread design being a little tighter compared to the KO2 tires. The load range of the tire is E, which implies for a 10-ply sidewall. It will make tires heavier but more durable and puncture resistant. Currently, it's the only load range KO3 has in the size, so I don't really have a choice. Also, I eventually will be putting on a camper top weighing around 450 pounds, so load range E will be a good rating to be overly safe for payload. Now let's talk about the skid plates and sliders. They're ranked number 2 on my priority list. For any vehicle that even occasionally goes off the beaten path, it's critical to have armor protection for vital components such as engine, transmission, transfer case, and gas tank. I have the skid plates from RCI Off-Road. There are 4 pieces and 1 cross member. They does the job of protecting the vehicle even being aluminum. I picked aluminum because weight saving is my priority, especially for a compact and smaller Tacoma. The total weight saving of going full skid is probably around hundreds of pounds by choosing aluminum over steel. My only problem with RCI skid plates is the fitting of the transfer case skid. It comes in contact with the stock exhaust pipe and creating this very loud rattling noise while vehicle is on. The rattle also got worse, louder and more frequent for me, which I don't really know why. I called RCI Off-Road and they acknowledged this issue and said it's due to the exhaust pipe not being a solid connection, hence will vary in terms of how much it hangs down. They have a solution of inserting 3 additional nylon spacer in the very back of the transfer case skid to create a gap to eliminate the problem. For sliders, I need the same thing, which is weight saving and protection at the same time. After looking everywhere online, I got my eyes on the Greenlane off-road aluminum sliders. On their website, it claims that it cannot be used as recovery or jack point, so I reached out to them to get a clarification. Basically, the claim is for safety reasons. While they should be able to withstand the load of holding one side of the truck up when sliding over a rock briefly, it's a much different type of loading than a static hold for an extended period of time. So I tested it myself. The slider is definitely strong enough to take the load of lifting maybe 75% of the truck up. However, we run out of the travel on one of the jack, so we have to stop the experiment. I also stood on it and rocked up and down. No visible movement nor flex of the slider were observed. But please remember that these are just my own testing. For your own usages, please follow the manufacturer's suggested way of how to use it. We also measure the weight of the stock running boards and the Greenlane off-road aluminum sliders, and they're surprisingly close. One single stock running steps weighs about 21 pounds, and one side of the Greenlane off-road aluminum slider weighs 26 pounds. It's only 5 pounds more than the stock running board, which is very impressive given the strength difference. Please check them out in the description below. If you like one, purchase them with my code to save you 5%. During the harsh off-road trip we were on this past weekend, the Greenlane off-road aluminum sliders certainly did their job protecting the truck. It has lots of scratches from the trip, but being aluminum, I don't even need to touch them up since they probably won't rust as easy as steel. The only downside of this product, in my opinion, is that it's not a perfect design where some of the control boxes or bracket lines has to be either zip tied up away from rubbing. Also, the big 14mm bolt that goes on the bottom to the frame is not provided, so we have to reuse the stock one. With the additional thickness of the slider, I find that stock 14mm bolt to be a lot shorter than I'd like to have enough thread for peace of mind. If you're subscribed to my channel, you may already know that I'm a sucker for lights. I know for most of my use cases, I probably don't need many auxiliary lights. However, to me, this is something better to have when you need, even occasionally. I tested many lights so you don't have to waste your money or time picking the right one for you. I built this light mounting surface out of 80/20 extruded aluminum bar on top of an NFAB bar that I got off of Amazon. I'll put the link in the description below. Currently, I'm rocking a pair of Diode Dynamics SS5 Pro, one in spot and one in combo beam pattern, and Baja Design Squadron Pro in factory amber. I also have a pair of Diode Dynamics SS3 Pro in fog pattern installed in the stock fog light location. For reverse lighting, I have the Miso Custom Stage 1 mod done to the tail light. Basically, it allows a larger one-piece brake light and adding the amber turning signal. I also have installed Diode Dynamics C1R multi-mode light pod next to the license plate. It is wired using Diode Dynamics harness. It's a plug and play, and it has strobe function, running light, brighter brake light, and white reverse light. I'll put everything I'm mentioning in this video in the description below so you can check them out. Living in the Rust Belt makes me realize that no matter what vehicle I own, if the vehicle's frame is exposed like a truck or body-on-frame vehicles, I need to undercoat it as early as possible to prevent any rust forming on the frame and steel components. I have been using CRC rust inhibitor for my Tundra, and it worked great. So the first week of me owning the Tacoma, I did the same thing. I touched up the undercarriage of the Tacoma and sprayed several bottles of CRC rust inhibitor. It forms a thick wax-like layer over the frame, so the metal is not exposed to moisture or air. Therefore, rust is prevented, to the best of my capabilities at least. I mainly try to spray as much frame components as possible so that at least the frame stays clean from the rust. As you see here, I'm reaching all the inside of the C-channel frame and the components, so hopefully that will do the job. My Tacoma is still on its stock TRD off-road suspension. I don't want to touch the suspension yet because I want to get a good feel of them and I'm not sure if I really need to lift my truck either for extra height or extra shock absorbing performance. As mentioned earlier in this video, I'm planning on adding around 450 pounds of additional weight in the back, so I am considering a pair of Firestone airbags with Daystar cradles in the back on top of the leaf spring to help support the extra weight from the camper. Alright, enough talk about modifications I've done to my truck. How do they perform on the trails? I'm gonna show you right now. Thanks to my friend Kai from Tinker's Adventure for inviting me over to Rausch Creek Offroad Park for a day of filming with his Land Cruiser 250 series and our friend Dennis with his 2014 FJ Trail Team Edition. It's the last production year of the FJ Cruiser in America. That FJ is super clean and worth a lot of money. So we have about 60 miles of highway driving with 3 of these vehicles. Why can't we test the miles per gallon difference between these 3? I know one is the 4.0 V6 on the FJ, on the Tacoma it's a 3.5 V6, and on the Land Cruiser 250 it's a 2.4 turbo hybrid. I'm very curious to find out how different are they in terms of MPG in real life situation on the highway. So that's exactly what we did. We first fill up all 3 vehicles. Then we headed towards Rausch Creek Offroad Park in a convoy. Averaging speed is about 70 miles an hour. Right before we reach our destination Rausch Creek Offroad Park, we stopped at a gas station to fill up again. Then we compare our volume of gas consumed and distance traveled to get the MPG difference. This is what happened. Okay. 2.8.
Hold that.
2.8 gallon. Alright. What's your volume, Kai? 244?
Yeah.
Alright, let me get that. 244 for the Land Cruiser. FJ is 2.8. Tacoma 2.68. All right.
Calculator. 56.8 divided by 2.441.
Woo! 23. What about divided by 2.68? 21.
Not bad.
Not bad.
What's that?
2.88.
2.88.
19. So as expected, the hybrid 2.4 turbo on the Land Cruiser 250 series have the highest miles per gallon at 23.27, and the Tacoma's 3.5 V6 comes in at the second place, around 21.1, and the 4-liter V6 from the FJ Cruiser gets around 19.7 miles per gallon. Given all 3 vehicles are in complete stock configuration, our goal today is to utilize the green trails only to test out the difference between 3 vehicles. Mainly the FJ and the Land Cruiser. If you're interested in that, please stay tuned to Kai's video on his YouTube channel, Tinker's Adventure. I'm just gonna briefly show you today how those 2 trucks perform. However, I'm mainly going to focus on how mine is, how my Tacoma is compared to the other 2 being a long wheelbase truck. For any of you who is familiar with Rausch Creek Offroad Park, you may already know that even the green trails are very challenging to stock vehicles, especially if you have a shorter tire size, because the terrain at Rausch Creek is really rocky and off-cambered, and sometimes if you're not paying attention with smaller tires, you're just going to drag on your frames all the time. This is a section of very steep decline on power line going into Trail 11 direction. So this is actually the first time I've ever tried out my 4 lows crawl ratio, and it seems to be adequate, especially for the close to stock tire size, and the KO3 performed flawlessly. No loss of traction there. Just want to clarify that I'm a really slow off-roader, so I really try to crawl if I can. to avoid any frame damage or component being damaged on my truck. I can already see the comments saying, oh, you're so slow, you should have sent it, but that's just not my style. So please bear with me. My 2021 Toyota Tacoma Off Road has about 9.4 inches of ground clearance stock. However, with my one size up tires, I'm gaining about 0.5 inches of extra ground clearance to make it around 10 inches, which is no slouch. Here's a section where you're dipping down into a lower ground and then there's a steep incline right after. So that definitely tests out the departure and approach angle of my truck. As you see here, both front driver and rear passenger tires have already been lifted and the truck is dragging its hitch all the way. Definitely a little lacking in terms of the departure angle. Both Land Cruiser 250 and the FJ Cruiser went through that area without any hiccups due to the shorter wheelbase compared to the Toyota Tacoma. Do you hear that? The vibration and the jerkiness of the entire truck is annoying the heck out of me. The original plan is for my truck to use crawl control to tackle this Trail 11 Jeep Badge of Honor trail at Rausch Creek. However, it's so loud and aggressive to the point where the entire truck is rocking front and back really hard. In my opinion, this defeats the purpose of crawl control because the whole point of using crawl control is to be able to control your motion, your posture of the truck going off-road. And doing this is just the opposite of that. So I had to turn off the crawl control and use my trusted right foot and left foot to modulate the motion of the truck up Trail 11. So Trail 11 consists of large sections of drop-off going up an incline. I would suggest for your vehicle to have skid plates and longer travel suspensions to be able to tackle this. At least have a differential locker or a very effective traction control system like Toyota's A-Track system. Here I just use my rear locker and 4-low trying to feather the throttle and tackle this Trail 11. I'm definitely having diagonal wheels in the air because the articulation of the Tacoma's stock suspension is just not up to par of, to conquer this trail without lifting a tire or two. It's at the end of this Trail 11 where I definitely got my money worth for my RCI skid plates because I hit that sharp rock protruding out of the dirt directly to my truck face on without even seeing it. It's really like hitting a wall when I'm driving and the truck just completely stopped, like hard stop.
That's your mud flap. Yeah, feels great.
So I personally had no idea what I was hitting without looking or without coming out of the vehicle looking at it. I just trusted my spotter, it's a rock, so I tried left and right, and I feel like turning passenger side has a higher chance of lifting the vehicle even higher so that it will avoid that rock, which eventually worked. Kind of nerve-wracking, being a stock Tacoma and not being able to see it's actually hitting a huge boulder. But fortunately I have the RCI skid plate protecting it. So this is the same climb on Trail 11 from a different camera angle thanks to Kai. So this angle really shows the articulation limit of the truck better. As you see, the truck is lifting tires really high in the air while only having two diagonal wheel tires planted on the ground. This is really a good test of articulation and the traction control. In my case, it will be the rear locker and the front traction control, so that the truck just keeps moving forward and upwards with traction instead of losing traction to the spinning wheels off the ground. And that passenger rear tire is tucked in pretty well. So before the trip, I was considering removing my rear mud flaps, because it's a rigid mud flaps and I didn't want to rip it off just like I did to my Tundra years ago. However, these mud flaps from Tufskinz really did well in terms of tugging or dragging or bending resistance. It does make a lot of noise when making contact, but it stayed intact, didn't get ripped off or anything. So I think it's a good product for me.
Alright, you cleared it. Nice.
Alright, now is the third camera angle from behind of the truck. Right here, it really shows you what I mean by the crawl control being really aggressive in terms of jerkiness and rocking the truck back and forth and then loud noise. I would have to say that for the off-road vehicles, nothing satisfies me more than having a flexi suspension. I can pretty much sit here all day staring at the screen looking at the trucks articulating through moguls like this. So how did the other two trucks perform on this Trail 11, you might ask? I'm gonna leave you a little suspense because I don't want to spoil Kai's video for you, so please stay tuned for Kai's video that's dropping soon. But what I can tell you is that I'm really happy with my stock or OEM plus Tacoma, with the skid plates protecting the truck and the BFG KO3 tire being 0.5 inch higher clearance wise. I think the truck is very capable and can definitely hang with the FJ Cruiser and the LC250 off-road, given that FJ Cruiser has a much shorter wheelbase and the LC250 has a closer to 33-inch tires. I think physically Tacoma is a little less capable off the road because of the longer wheelbase and shorter tire height. But it did everything the other two did, and I think that's plenty enough for me by having a reliable 3.5 V6 and relatively good fuel efficiency as well.